Welcome back to another episode of the Casual Exchanges podcast, where I brought everybody here to judge me this week. Kind of kidding. Actually, we are talking about judgment this week, criticism, and things of that nature. So, stick around for the intro. If you can't watch the whole thing, totally cool. Stick around. 5-minute intro. I'll give you the skinny, as the kids say. TLDR. Is that still a thing? The T? Fuck. Okay. But actually, we're going to be talking about, criticism. What kind of criticism is a little bit more constructive? Who should we take it from? When should we take it? When can we dish it out? All those kinds of things. Okay? And also a small rant at the end about judgment-free zones or safe places. Okay? So that's the extra long version. Okay. TLDR. Okay. If we just to give a couple of fast and loose talking points here. Okay, guys, let's be honest. Let's probably don't give unsolicited criticism to strangers. Okay, let's be honest. They don't care. Okay, when we're the ones getting unsolicited advice, let's be honest. We don't care. Why would the other person give a shit on when the shoe is on the other foot? Let's be honest, okay? So probably doesn't matter. Just don't do it. Okay? If you give criticism to a friend or somebody in one of your social circles, right? So like coworker, friends, family, try to come from a place where you're trying to be gentle but still trying to remain constructive. I don't mean gentle as in like you beat around the bush and stuff like that, but you do have to, try to tailor the message to the individual, right? Some people, I have some friends that I can just go up and just be straight up. I could be like, yo, dude, you sucked. That Fortnite duo that we played, I hardcore carried your ass and you just dropped the ball. Like I had to revive you like 4 times, bro. Right. Other times, okay. If I'm doing something with my girlfriend or something like that, it greatly behooves me to be a little bit more gentle with the message and be like, hey, babe, have you considered, this thing that I'm saying? You know what I mean? The message is going to be a little bit different, and I think that's worth mentioning. Okay, a couple of other talking points are we should probably be willing to take criticism from friends. If you can't take criticism from your friends or the people that are closest to you, I'm doubtful that you can take criticism from complete strangers, which means you really can't take a whole lot of criticism, which begs a few questions. Okay, so at least with, for your friends and stuff like that, you should try to make sure that you're willing to take some criticism from them. And I make the argument later in the analysis that you should probably be able to take some criticism from strangers as well. Okay, now that's less common. And maybe not like complete strangers, okay? Definitely not all the time. But, people you're less familiar with, people who you would just deem as like an acquaintance or something like that. I'll make the argument later in the analysis. I won't ramble too much right here. I think a few fair things to consider when we're talking about criticism. What's the source? What are the intentions? And is there any sort of constructive, feedback from this? Okay. So again, in the event that it's like when my grandma comes up and tells me that I shouldn't give my daughter candy because of the threat of like anthrax or something like that, like I have no doubt she has good intentions, and the source in general, I love my grandma and I'm sure she has a lot of sage wisdom, but in this case, I'm not going to sit there and fight with her. Be like, well, actually, like these M&Ms are probably like totally fine. I'm not going to sit there and argue with her. She's going to tell me about this story she heard in the news where this kid found an AR-15 in his licorice. Right. So we'll just agree to disagree on that one. I'm not going to fight her on it. And okay, I'll tell my kid like, oh, go to the other room. Don't let your grandma see you or some shit like that. I don't think that should be the case all the time. But to some extent, let's pick our battles. And that's not the hill I'm going to die on. Okay, so hopefully I got through that quick enough for you guys. The TLDR, the skinny, the T, whatever the kids are saying this week. As my usual disclaimer, don't forget, guys, take all of this with a grain of salt. I'm just some rando talking shit on the internet. This video is for entertainment purposes, primarily. So, don't change your whole fucking life on this video or something like that. It's really just to get some thoughts circulating and, maybe have a conversation down the road with some people who agree or disagree or have some, different ideas of me. So, with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, Casual Exchanges Podcast on all platforms. Thanks so much for joining us again. Tell your friends. Good luck. Have fun. Let's go kick some ass. I'll see you in the analysis. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Casual Exchanges Podcast here. New segment, new podcast, new haircut. We are on fire, okay? Dumpster fire. This week we're going to be talking about some criticism, the judgment-free zone, and a bunch of other shit, okay? So, on the topic of criticism, mostly how to receive it, when to receive it, who should we take it from, and when should we dish it out? Just a couple of thoughts, okay? As always, these are all my ideas. You saw me draft them out during the opening intro portion of the video. So this is going to be the analysis of that, okay? Welcome to the analysis. Okay, so I think jumping right in here, the first thing that I think is helpful to outline is when is criticism not helpful? When should we not be taking it? When should we not dish it out? Okay, I think a couple of situations, okay? So I don't think it's super helpful to criticize people when they're in the middle of doing whatever it is you're criticizing them for, okay? So a perfect example of this is the fact that I finally did, I think I had talked about it on the last podcast. I'd been waiting like 3 months to do my breaks. Nothing was wrong. I'm just fucking lazy. Okay, so this past weekend or two, I finally did the breaks, okay? And it took me 3 hours. Clearly, I'm not a fucking mechanic, okay? All of my ancestors simultaneously just absolutely fucking disappointed in me. I'm not the mechanic of my forefathers, okay? That's very well established. So yeah, it took me 3 hours. I totally suck. But it would not have been helpful. It would not have been helpful if my girl and my sibling were sitting there on the sidelines like, why are you taking so long? Blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? That's not what the video says. They didn't do that, thank God, or else, you know what I mean? Like, we all would have fought about it. I would have lost my mind. But it wouldn't have been productive, right? It doesn't actually help me, okay? Looking back, I can very clearly see what I fucked up, okay? And afterwards, okay, if after the fact we want to talk about it, I think that's different. I think doing it in the middle of the thing, I think it just slows everything down, and it's much less constructive, okay? So that's, for me personally, that's something I very much try hard not to do, okay? I wait until afterwards. I pull somebody off to the side. So, like, if I was criticizing myself on this horrible fucking mechanic job, right? I would wait until the end. I'd pull myself off to the side. I'd be like, hey, dude, I don't know if you realize this, but you actually forgot to loosen the lug nuts before you got the car off the ground, okay? Which means it took you an extra 45 minutes to actually just get the tires off, okay? I'm not sure if you realize this, but if you would have just left the car on the fucking ground, okay, it would have been much easier for you to get leverage because the tires wouldn't have been fucking spinning, okay? Just a thought. I would be much more charitable with somebody else. But for myself, very easily, in hindsight, fucked that up. I didn't have a fucking clamp to decompress the thing. You know what I'm saying? There was a fat ass Black Widow in there, and I'm not the warrior of my ancestors, so I didn't just fucking murder this thing with my bare hands. A whole host of things. Okay, we don't need to go over all of them. But yeah, just very clearly looking back on it, yeah, I fucked shit up. It took forever. Like nobody would. I wasn't happy at the end of it. I was like, oh, thank God. I don't know if this was actually worth it, but at least I'm done. But again, to circle back, it would have sucked much more if I would have had people on the sidelines. Boo, you suck. Like that's not how they do it at Pep Boys. Like all this shit, right? It just wouldn't have helped. So give that some thought. And like if you're in the middle of a team, right? It's same thing, not helpful. My sibling helped with parts of it, and it would have just added to the stress and the process, like length, if they would have been there. You know, like, oh no, the video says this other thing, right? It creates a whole nother issue that you need to solve. So give that some thought. I feel like most people would agree with that, right? Because nobody likes to be on the receiving end of that. And I think there's a saying, I could be absolutely wrong, right? But I think there's a saying to the effect that a mediocre plan executed relentlessly is oftentimes better than a great plan that's just half-assed. So let me know what you think on that. I think another example of when criticism isn't helpful is when it revolves around things that you can't change. Okay? So like if you come up and tell me I'm ugly, it's like, all right, dude, like I don't know what to tell you. Like I understand that. I'm very well aware. People have been calling me ugly for a very long time, but like I'm not interested in like, you know, some of the surgery and shit like that. So like it just is what it is. That's why I work out. So that hopefully at least one day I'm like jacked and it makes up for the level of ugliness. Outside of that, like I don't know what to tell you. Okay. So another portion that I actually didn't add on this, I fucked up. But I think criticism is also less helpful if you don't put forth a solution. Okay. So and this is something that's really frustrating. I've worked previously in like operations warehouse jobs and stuff like that, where you are set on a production standard, right? You are expected to do X amount of work in a given day, and they pretty much grade you on it, on the quality and the speed of your work. Okay, and you get a lot of like wacky shit. I can make a whole fucking video on that. But one of the things that I find just super not productive, to be charitable, is, again, you're graded on like your speed and quality and stuff like that, right? Like you have a certain amount of things that you need to get done in a day. And it's a very physical job if you're working in a warehouse, right? So people are going through, even the guys that are like busting ass and stuff like that, right? Like you can only go so fast. Okay? Some people move a little bit faster? Like, yeah, probably. Some people cannot. They're hauling ass, right? You get to a point where moving faster is just not an option. And so if you're already kind of at the top of that production field, it's not very constructive for management to come up and be like, hey man, you gotta hustle, you gotta move faster, this and that. It's like, yeah, look, buddy, I don't know how you expect me to move faster. I don't know if like maybe I should go pick up some of John's magic sawdust that he's selling in the parking lot out of his trunk. But aside from that, I don't know how the fuck you want me to move faster, bro. Like, do you want me to, should I lose weight? Should I crouch, be more aerodynamic? Like, what solution do you have for me? What do you see? Okay? Because just telling me to move faster, like, if I'm already trying to hustle, I don't know how that helps me. I digress. But I think putting forth the solution really fucking important, okay? And I think maybe I did mention it somewhere down here, but if you just tell somebody that they suck at something, again, I think it falls into those two categories. Like, I don't understand what you expect me to do with that. Like, how do I get better? What is it exactly that I suck at? Like, which part of this process? Like, if somebody tells me that, I immediately have a million fucking questions. So that just strikes me as not very productive. Okay. So, give me your thoughts on that. I think it is it becomes a little bit nuanced when we're talking about criticizing people's past actions or something like that, right? I'm not telling you to go one way or another, but obviously the past is something that we cannot change, right? So under that, under one of the previous bullet points, right, something that is unchangeable, I could see somebody coming up with like, oh, well, it's in the past, we can't change it, don't criticize it. Well, to some extent. Again, try to approach it in a productive manner. But if somebody has done the same shit 5, 10, 15, 20 times, it's like, okay, well, that's no longer like one thing they did. That's a pattern of behavior. And I think that's open to criticism, right? That's something that you are clearly actively engaging in. It's not like, oh, well, like you're always on me for my past, or, you're always shitting on me for things in the past. It's like, well, you've done it 15 times in the past 2 months, and unless you've turned over a new leaf in the past 15 minutes, I think it's completely reasonable for me to call it into question. But I think there is a little bit more nuance there. So let me know what you think. So moving on to the next topic here. I think it's a fair question to ask. When should we consider some of the criticisms that you've received? Okay, when is some of this criticism valid? Okay, and I think a couple of things came to mind. Okay, I think if thinking about this personally, right? If I don't meet a goal, maybe I do meet the goal, but I don't get the result I expected. Okay, I'm fucking absolute meathead, so I have to put it into lifting terms, right? But if I have a goal of squatting 550 pounds or something, and I don't meet that goal, I have questions. Okay, if I do hit that goal, but it was super fucking difficult and I expected to, be able to get out of it a little easier, again, I have some questions. If somebody sees me at the gym squatting, and I've previously seen them squatting, something crazy like 700 pounds, like, okay, maybe they know some shit. Okay. And that's to the idea of, if somebody is, kind of an authority on the topic, or they know some things, right? A common one that some people are going to disagree with, but like your boss or your boss's boss, right? Some sort of authority figure within your company that's been there a really long time and should know some shit. Like, okay, probably be willing to take like some criticism. But I know not everybody wants to hear that, because everybody would swear that their boss knows nothing. So I digress. I'm not going to fight everybody on that one. And another interesting one is if somebody poses something that I hadn't considered. I think it's really important to, roll it back, consider that. Why didn't I consider that? Those are all just some questions I'm going to have. Okay. So a couple of examples of this are towards the beginning of the year. I kind of started looking into some of my finances and stuff like that. And prior to this year, I'm super sketched out. I'm not paranoid to the effect that like I stuff all of my money in a mattress, but I was a little bit paranoid about like moving money into new places and stuff like that. I really liked having it all in one place, not my mattress. But I was a little bit paranoid. And then finally I finally talked to a friend who is actually works in finance and he does investments and stuff like that. And he explained a couple of things to me. And he explained a couple of avenues that are very safe. And he kind of broke it into categories like, hey, this is actually like super safe, like almost guaranteed. Okay, this is relatively safe. And then you have other options that are a little bit more risky. Okay, but having him kind of explain some things to me really put me at ease, and I was able to come to terms, and I took all my money out of my mattress and shit like that. So I thought it was super helpful, and he was just coming from a place of like, hey, like I know you have, kind of some of these ideas, and I know you're a little bit paranoid about some of this stuff. But actually, there are some of these options that are just super, super safe, and I can totally help you kind of get on board with that stuff. So I thought that was super helpful, and I kind of had to open up a little bit, and I had to be willing to accept the fact that like, okay, keeping all my money stuffed in my fucking mattress has some downsides. Maybe I could be doing something better with that. So let me know what you think. I think another example of like where I've kind of had to take some criticism is going back to drivers on the freeway. Okay, like we're all those people on the freeway, and of course me, like 100 million other people in the U.S., I think I'm a great fucking driver. Okay, I would if you put me in front of God right now, and he asked me, like, do you think you're a good driver? I would look him dead ass straight in the face and I'd be like, yeah, I think I'm great. Okay, and I genuinely believe that. Okay, but I have to consider the fact that, when I'm driving people around, they're holding the oh shit handle. They're I see them pull out their rosary and just look longingly into the sky. And everybody, as soon as they get out of the car, they kiss the land that they land on. I have to look at all these factors, and I have to look at the fact that people say like, are you, like all the criticisms that people give me on my driving, and I have to be open-minded to that, and I have to maybe accept the fact that like, okay, maybe I think I'm a good driver, but by other people's standards, I am in fact not the best driver, and maybe I should. Maybe, that's not a bad thing. Maybe I shouldn't pursue a career as like a fucking Uber driver, taxi driver, but maybe I do have a career in NASCAR. I don't know. Silver linings. I'm all about them. So those are just a couple of examples. I would love to hear people's examples of anything that you guys have taken criticism on. But I think these are some decent kind of first steps to consider. Especially if you don't, for me, the one that really sticks out is, if I don't meet a goal on something, I become obsessed with the why. I really want to understand, and I want outside perspectives, right? Because obviously I had this idea, I had this plan. It didn't come to fruition due to, whatever reason. And so I need to evaluate if there was anything in there that, I already kind of knew heading into it, like, oh, this might be a problem. That's one thing. But if I was really blindsided, I need outside perspectives, and I need people to kind of help me kind of understand, whatever it is that I missed. So let me know what you think. Okay. So I think another fair question on this topic is asking myself, okay, who do I think I can criticize me? When can they criticize me? Okay, and this one's really tough. Okay, and I think we have to put on our intellectually honest cap, and we really have to look in the mirror, and we really have to approach this one with an open mind. I think these next couple of points kind of go together. Okay. To reiterate, who can criticize us? When can they criticize us? And I think another fair option is what can they criticize us on? Okay. So I think we fall into this idea that the only people who can criticize us are like people who are better than us, right? Or authority figures, or people that we accept, know more than us, or people who are in a better situation than us. And I am going to push back on this idea a little bit. I don't think that's the case. Why? Like, how the fuck is that the case? Okay. So, who can criticize? In my opinion, I need to be open-minded to criticism from everybody. Okay. This is an uncomfortable idea. Okay. And we already established the fact that like not all criticism is actually constructive. Okay. But hang with me here for a second. Okay. There are a couple of things that we don't want to be criticized on, right? It just doesn't feel good. It feels like a personal attack, right? So for me, a couple of examples would be like, I wouldn't want somebody to call me like a shitty father or question my parenting skills or something like that, right? I wouldn't want somebody questioning like the integrity of like my work and my job or something like that. I wouldn't want somebody questioning the podcast, obviously. Just kidding. As a meathead, questioning some of my like lifting tactics and stuff, that would be like, God, my heart. But the reality is that all of these things, even some of them that I'm more vested in, I've been in my job for a couple years, I've been lifting for a couple years, I've been a dad for a couple years. But the reality is some people just have more experience, like by a long fucking shot. Okay. And so I really got to put on my fucking thinking cap, and I need to accept the fact that some people just have more experience. Okay. So do I think that nobody has fair criticisms in those avenues? Like, well, no, the reality is there probably are things I can do. Even if I'm working really hard, there probably are things I can do to be a better father, to be better at my job, to be a better lifter, to be a better podcaster. Obviously, that's a fucking lie. This podcast is great. I digress. But really, it is okay, and I don't think it's a complete admission of guilt to say like I could be a better father. I don't think that's the same thing is admitting, like I'm a shitty father. Like, no, I think those are completely different. Okay. And I think if I'm trying to be a better father, I think that has to come with the admission that I could be a better father. I could be a better lifter, be better at my job. Okay. I think it's okay to admit that we can do better at these things. I don't think it's the same as admitting that like, I'm fucking lazy or I do a shitty job. You know what I mean? No. I think we really have to try to be open-minded with the approach and really put our thinking caps on, really be open-minded, really go to a safe place and be like, you know what? I think I could do better. What are some things that I could do better at? You know what I mean? And that's where some of the criticism, comes in some of these like circles and having a bit of a safe place to go for criticism. Okay. Obviously, we can't just take criticism off the fucking street. Okay. Some people just don't know what they're talking about. Okay. But even in those situations, I would push back a smidge. Okay. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So it's worthwhile. It's worth considering. It's worth considering. Even if some guy at Walmart tells me like, oh man, you're a shit dad or something like that. It's like, okay, that's super, not constructive. But, what is it he saw that could have led him to that idea? Okay, I think that's an important question. Again, not that I would fucking take parenting advice from everybody at Walmart. Sorry, guys. But I think it's worth asking ourselves every once in a while, when people bring us criticism, even if it's people that we don't necessarily want to take criticism from, I think it's important to sit back, be honest with yourself, and see where they're coming from. Do they have even a morsel of a point? And if so, we should really try to analyze that. Okay, try to figure out what are the solutions and things like that. Okay. Now, I think a couple of more obvious answers, right, are people within your support group and people within your social circles. They should be able to criticize you to some extent, right? If they think that, either you did something wrong or you could have done something or handled something better. Again, in those safe places, I think you have less of a leg to stand on if you're trying to argue that, like, oh, no, can't criticize me. Even if it's on a bit of a sensitive subject, like parenting or something like that, those things that we do not want to get criticized on, I completely understand. But at the end of the day, we have to admit, even if we're doing our best, we are not the best. It's just the way it works, man. But again, to circle back to my first point, I think we should really try to be open-minded and take criticism from anybody who's trying to be constructive about it. Again, that's not saying that we implement everything that they fucking bring forward, okay? But it's worth thinking about. Take some time. Write a Word doc. I don't know. Okay? And I'm going to move on to the next part. Definitely not get lost. That's what I'm not going to do. Okay, but how should we weigh the criticism? Okay, so this kind of ties back into the last idea that we were talking about, some of these things that we don't like to get criticized on. I think weigh it out. Okay, I think a really easy way to weigh it out, to try to, if you picture a spectrum of criticism, constructive over here, super constructive, and then over here, super dog shit. Okay, I think you can weigh it out in a couple of different options. Okay, I think we can weigh it out based on the source, based on the intentions, and based on how constructive it is. Okay, and that should tell you, because again, if somebody, to go back to the guy at Walmart telling me that I'm a shitty dad, okay, it's like, okay, I can't really do anything with that. We already discussed, right? He didn't provide like a solution, so like I don't know what the fuck to do with that. Okay, but if a friend pulls me to the side and they're like, hey, dude, like I noticed that, we've been out here and you've been, on your phone this whole time. You're not really engaging or anything like that. Now, what I don't want to do is just go into immediate defensive mode and like, are you calling me a shit friend? Are you saying I'm not taking care of my daughter or something like that? Like, no. Like, obviously, he approached it in a bit of a gingerly way. He's just pointing out some things he noticed. He didn't even make any sort of accusation, right? So you have to take that in good faith, and either it's defensible and you're like, yeah, fuck, sorry, like I'm on call, I'm busy as fuck at work, and like I just have people blowing up my email. Or it's like, oh, wow, I was actually just like fucking scrolling TikTok for 2 hours at this barbecue, and I haven't engaged with any of my friends or my kids or anything like that. And it's like, wow, I really, that's not as defensible, in my opinion. Okay, so just trying to understand like where they're coming from. Again, in that situation, I think, it's a friend. I think he has a good intention. He approached it in good faith. He wasn't making accusations. He was pointing out observations. Okay, and then from there, it's, how constructive was it? It's, is your position defensible, or is it something you hadn't considered? And in which case, you probably should. So now let's go to how we should approach criticism. Okay, and I think this is very tricky. I think this is very individual. I think it should be approached a little gently, again, like in the example, right? You don't want to come out the gate. You don't want to come out the gate super hot. Certainly not if somebody is a little bit on, the skittish side. Okay, you just want to propose some sort of observation or something. You know what I mean? Don't accuse them of doing something completely wrong, or don't accuse them of malice or ill intent. Don't call them an idiot. These things. Going back to the idea of good faith in the previous video. Okay, we need to approach this gently. Okay, in the way that we would want to be approached, okay, I think is the easiest way to think about it, okay? Nobody wants to, even if you're super open-minded to criticism, again, not many people would be open to, the random guy at Walmart being like, oh, yeah, you're a fucking idiot, or something like that, right? So we got to approach it a little bit differently, okay? And to a couple of other things that we already kind of discussed in this video, I think it is super important, okay? Propose it in a bit of a sensitive fashion where you are taking their side into consideration, their perspective, their feelings into consideration. You're proposing just your observations, okay? And if they recognize that, like, oh, hey, yeah, that's totally understandable. I hadn't even thought about that, And if they're asking for more feedback, again, have some solutions, have some of that feedback to provide, try to be constructive. You know what I mean? So, and going back to the example of, working warehouse and stuff like that, it is completely different, where I was a seasoned member in the warehouse and stuff like that. And, at times management is just trying to get me to step my game up, trying to get, more production out of me and stuff like that. I think that's a completely different situation than if I see a new guy struggling with some things and I'm like, hey, dude, how are you doing? How are you adjusting? Is there anything you kind of need help with? I noticed X, Y, and Z, those kinds of things. Again, I think talking and just going back to the talking points, right? The intention is completely different. The constructiveness is completely different. I think those approaches are night and day, even though I think some people might see them as the same. Okay? So, we already talked about certain things that we don't like being criticized on. I think the only thing, obviously I gave my personal examples, but I think it would be helpful for some people, honestly for everybody, okay, going back to the idea in the last video of understanding some of your bias and stuff like that, I think it would be super helpful and super constructive for everybody to just try to, reflect on what are some things that no matter what somebody said, no matter how nice somebody was being, no matter how good somebody's intentions were, what are a couple of things that you would not feel good being criticized on? And I think for a lot of people, it's similar. And that's why I gave these examples. Parenting and work are just no-brainers, okay? Nobody, I cannot, if somebody disagrees, let me know. But I cannot think of a single person who would like it if somebody called them, somebody criticized something about their parenting or somebody criticized something about their job. Almost nobody. It doesn't matter how fucking gentle somebody is being. People take that as like a fucking personal attack. And I don't think that's the case all the time. Sometimes people are dicks, but not all the fucking time. Sometimes even when people are being gentle and sensitive about the situation, we take it as a personal attack. And I don't think that's helpful. So next, I gotta talk about a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. I'm not gonna lie. Hopefully I don't. I was just looking at the record time. I was like, wow, I'm getting through this really quick. And I forgot I put this in here, which is perfect because I'm probably going to rant for 30 fucking minutes. I apologize in advance. Okay. But the idea of a judgment-free zone, I want us to have an open and honest conversation, okay, about what this should be. Because I think Okay, I think people use it in a really weird way. Okay, I think one of the ways I see people use it is almost like an echo chamber, right? Like hey, buddy, this is a judgment-free zone, right? And what they really mean is like you can't ask them questions, you can't criticize any of their, actions or ideas, and really they just want this to be a place where they can do what they want and not acknowledge consequences or criticisms. Okay, maybe this isn't the majority, but I definitely see this. And I take issue with it because I think that's bullshit. I don't think that's what a judgment-free zone is. I imagine a situation where I'm in a 2-story house, right? And, I have some friends come over, and one of my friends is telling me, like, yeah, I think it'd be super cool if, like, we got some blankets and we all jumped off the roof and used them as parachutes. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a bad fucking idea. Unless your goal is to, like, break something, like physically break some physical part of your body, I just don't know that that's a good idea. Like, this is a 2-story house. Like, if you're on the roof, it's even higher. I just don't know that that's going to go the way you think it is. And, there are definitely some people who just immediately go into defense mode in situations like that. And they're like, hey, man, I thought this was a safe place. You know what I mean? Like, why are you attacking me? I'm feeling attacked right now. And I mean, in those situations where it's just clearly a bad idea like that, and not only clearly a bad idea, but you're doing something that's going to be deleterious to your physical fucking health, it's like, okay, I get it. You're feeling attacked. You don't feel safe. Sorry. If that's how you see this situation, then you probably shouldn't feel safe, like walking with sharp objects either. I just don't know what to tell you, right? We can, in that sort of situation, if multiple people are saying like, yeah, no, that's a bad idea. Like, not only is it a bad idea, but you're gonna fuck your shit up. It's like I don't think we're attacking you. I think we're pointing out some issues with the line of thinking that ended up proposing that idea. Okay. We should be able to have these conversations. We should be able to criticize things. Okay. Now, if that person hears everybody else's kind of ideas and is still like, no, this is still something I want to do. Hey, man, more power to you. But maybe don't try to convince me that it's a good fucking idea. Okay. Now, I do want to add the caveat. I'm not just trying to shit on people, okay? But I do want to add the caveat. It gets difficult, it gets nuanced, it gets complex, okay? In certain situations, right? Going back to people with kind of a reoccurring issue, okay? If I've had a ton of friends do this where they'll go out and buy a new car against literally all available advice and knowledge and information, okay? They'll go out, they'll buy a car, they'll get slammed with a heavy fucking car payment and a huge fucking insurance rate, and they're struggling to keep up with this thing, okay? So, I don't think it's super helpful to just shit on them like every day you see them. Again, I think we're probably all guilty of this to some extent. I know I am. It's really hard every time you see them not to be like, oh wow, that's the prettiest fucking ball and chain I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? Like that's really cool. Not helpful. I'll be the first one to admit it. That's not helpful. I think what would be a slightly more helpful approach, right, is not to shit on them outside of that, but when they do bring up this reoccurring concern of like finance and stuff like that, it's like, oh man, this fucking car payment is drowning me. I just can't fucking, it's holding me back and all this stuff. Try to be constructive with that. Try to remind them like, hey, have you considered, getting rid of it, trading it back or something like that. I don't actually know how you get rid of your car. I'll be honest. I've had mine for a while. But trying to be constructive. Again, provide some solutions, or even try to provide solutions outside of getting rid of the car. If they are really fucking determined to strap themselves to this fucking anchor that is trying so hard to drown them financially, there are other solutions, right? Have you considered, is there a situation where you could work towards a raise at work? Have you considered picking up a side gig? Are there, what does your budget look like? We can go through some of your expenses, see where we can clean up some of your spending, right? Like, I think we should try to approach it in a really constructive way. And I know it is difficult at times, certainly in that, like, they're a willing participant. They willingly made this silly choice against everybody's advice. But I still think that we should try to do our best and be constructive. I know not everybody is going to agree with me on that one. Not everybody is going to agree with me on, fucking the judgment-free zone and stuff like that. But for me, I think what a judgment-free zone should be is a place, where to some extent, your opinions are valued. You can have some open discussions. People don't just shit on you for every mistake. Like we've all been in some of these situations, right? Where it doesn't matter what we say, it's always wrong. Men, with every situation with your wife, like, you understand what I'm saying. Totally kidding. But actually, we've all been in those situations, right? Whether it was in high school, whether it was a shitty first job or something like that, where we could not do anything right. Okay? That's the opposite. That's a toxic fucking environment. Okay? And those are the ones that we need to avoid. Okay? I think it is pretty clear. Like, it is pretty clear when your input is valued to some extent. Okay, and like your actual input, like not everything you say. Okay, people aren't gonna hang on every word you fucking say. Okay, you're not Brad Pitt or some shit. But people acknowledge, like, when you have either a good idea or an idea they hadn't considered. You know what I mean? People kind of give you a little bit of that good little pat on the back type shit that makes us feel good, right? I think that's an indicator that you're valued. Like it's your job, like your boss letting you know, like, hey, yeah, you did a good job on that. Thanks for your help on that. Like some of these positive reinforcements and stuff like that. Okay. And again, to the place of open discussion, right? Like, hopefully you're not in a place where people just assume the worst or jump to conclusions. You know what I mean? Like, if and this is something that's really hard to do, going back to the idea of parenting, right? When my kid comes in with a guilty look on her face and she's like, "Dad," and I'm like, in the back of my head, I try not to verbalize it, but in the back of my head, I'm like, what the fuck did you break right now? Right? But I need to pose myself a little bit better. Okay, I need to, be like, hey, what's up? What's going on? What's a problem? Right? Like, I need to try to be a little bit more open-minded. I need to try to compose myself and make sure, that I'm trying to put forth, hey, if there's an issue, let's try to solve it. Let's try to figure it out, right? And just to circle back to the idea, right? A judgment-free zone is not somewhere, or a safe place, right? It's not somewhere that you can do whatever you want. And it's not somewhere where nobody ever tells you when you fuck something up. I think a judgment-free zone, or these safe places, I think it would be more constructive to try to make them a place where, like, when you fuck up, people help you towards a solution. Okay? That, like, nobody is going to deny that you fucked up later down the road. Don't try to convince people, like, well, yeah, it wasn't that bad. At least we learned from it. It's like, no, motherfucker. You jumped off the roof, broke your leg, and we had to rush you to the hospital. That was fucking dumb. Don't try to convince me that was a good idea. Well, at least I learned from it. No, shut up, bro. Come on. 30 minutes. I told you I was going to rant on this. I'm sorry in advance. But again, just trying to come from a place of like being constructive, being open-minded, be willing to accept the bad news. I know this one's going to be really tough, obviously, because in parenting and stuff like that, it's really hard, and I think it's going to be the ultimate, kind of test for me, because we obviously try to instill really good values into our kids, and we try to arm them with all of our past mistakes. We try to give them, a bunch of stories, a bunch of anecdote as to like, hey, you shouldn't, I tried a couple of these things, fucked myself up every time, right? And we try to tell them, and we try to get them to a place where like they learn from our mistakes, but sometimes we have to make our own mistakes. And that's okay. It's less okay if we keep making the same fucking mistake, let's be honest. But it's okay that we make mistakes. We all make fucking mistakes. We all do dumb shit sometimes. We all say dumb shit sometimes, okay? And I think a judgment-free zone, or a safe place, right, acknowledges that and then moves forward and helps towards solutions, okay? It's not denying the fact that like, oh no, that wasn't fucking dumb. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you broke your leg, but you learned from it, right? It's all about the experience. Like, no, bro. The doctor said that's the craziest fucking break he's ever seen. You fucking absolutely decimated your fucking tibia and your fibula. You know what I mean? Like, it looked like fucking sawdust in the x-ray. Doctors said it's a fucking miracle. You didn't lose the whole leg. Okay, I'm coming back. But again, coming to the idea of, trying to be productive, trying to be constructive with some of that feedback. Now, on to the final talking points. I'm finally going to shut up. We're finally going to end this video. I told you guys I was going on that rant. I tried to be very transparent. Okay? But on the topic of why we should care, I think, and I alluded to this earlier in the video, I think we all have this predilection or this bias, okay, that we should only, we're very selective, in my opinion, by nature, about who we take criticism from and what we take criticism on. And I think to some extent that's going to hinder progress. I think if I never take criticism from on my parenting, I'm doubtful that I can be the best parent that I can be. Okay, there are a lot of people out there with a lot of good experience, and some people are just randomly going to say some shit that sparks a good idea in me. You know what I mean? They might not actually have anything really productive, but they say something that then helps me produce a productive thought. Okay? And I think so it's helpful to listen. It's helpful to try to get a really wide array of these ideas. Okay? So not only should we be trying to take criticism from people that we agree on and things that we're willing to accept criticism on. Okay? And I think a fair kind of example of this, right, is if somebody you don't like said something you don't like, are you willing to take that criticism? If fucking Jim from The Office says something about parenting, right? Like, is Jim automatically wrong? Like, no. Like, people aren't automatically wrong because we don't like them. And people aren't automatically wrong if they give a criticism on, like, my parenting or something like that, right? Something I don't want to be criticized on. Okay, so I have to take the blinders off, and I have to be willing to really, okay, well, what Jim said is actually really interesting. I hadn't considered that. And maybe it's a bad idea for reasons X, Y, and Z, but I should be able to produce that. Again, I should be able to produce, why is it a bad idea? Why do I think it's a bad idea? Or what do I think are the limitations? Just going back to the intellectual honesty. Okay, I think it'd be super helpful. And for me personally, I know absolutely 100%. I would put my hand on a damn Bible right now. You know, I need to have a piece of that humble pie. You know what I mean? I have to take a step back. No matter how hard I think I'm working in all of these avenues, I have to be willing to accept that there are things that I don't know, that I don't see, and that some of these other perspectives could help point that out to me. You know what I mean? And therefore, they could help me. They could help me even if I'm working really hard and I'm doing my best. They could help me get to that next level, break through, and do a better job. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. We're finishing up the analysis. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. Casual Exchanges podcast on all social media. Don't forget to follow. I'm gonna start live streaming the drafting of these Word docs and shit to try to get some Q&A. I'd love to have feedback on all these ideas, and that way you can tell me if these ideas are dog shit. You can actually tell me in real time, not just a comment. You could tell me as I'm drafting the idea, fucking dog shit, bro. Like, you know what I mean? It's some next level shit. You know, get some engagement going, get some feedback. I would love to hear all of your ideas on this. Thanks again for watching, guys. Good luck. Have fun. Let's go kick some ass.